In this video, I'll be looking at the Sony 50mm f1.8 lens. I just got this very recently and I'm here in the woods testing it out. Now, there are three reasons why you buy this lens. The first one being that this is probably the cheapest lens you can buy on the market for any camera system, because this comes in at around 180 euros. I got it from Amazon and it's brand new, which makes it cheaper than any other lens that I have, even the 20mm f1.7 pancake lens for my Micro Four Thirds system. That one is around 300 euros. So this is definitely the cheapest lens, and that means that I'm not expecting a lot from it. The second reason why you want to buy this lens is because it's really lightweight. This comes in at around 186 grams, which means that I can use it with my Sony a7 III on a gimbal. I have the Xeon Weeble Lab, and if I put the camera with the 24 to 70mm Sigma lens on top of that, the camera is so front heavy that I can't actually balance my gimbal. So having a small package like this really makes the whole balancing thing and the load on the gimbal a lot easier. So the lightweight is reason number two. It also makes your camera look like a point and shoot camera. You can take it anywhere. And the third reason is, well, 50mm is a standard focal length for any type of photography, and that aperture of 1.8. Now, since this lens is not very expensive, I'm not expecting a lot of optical performance with an aperture open wide to f1.8, because if you divide 50mm by that f1.8, you get more than 25mm of an entrance pupil diameter. That's more than an inch. Now, that means that a lot of the glass in the lens is going to be used, meaning that if the glass is not completely perfectly polished, you're going to have chromatic aberrations, you're going to have distortions, and just the overall look of the image, especially on the edges, is not going to be that well. And this is what I'll be testing out today. Wide open and typical f11, my woodland photography aperture that I use. So let's go. Now for continuous autofocus, I'm actually going to see how this lens is tracking me as I'm walking backwards away from the lens and towards the lens. Now I know it's not as good as the Sigma lens because the motor on this one is really loud and it's really slow. Basically, it's struggling to actually acquire focus. Therefore, probably not the best lens for video, but I don't know if it's keeping up with me right now. I think it's okay. Now I don't have any face tracking turned on, so it's just a central area for focusing. The cool thing also about the lens is that it makes a full frame camera package look like a Micro Four Thirds. Now, I've been a Micro Four Thirds photographer for many years, and this is very familiar to me. And I do like the shape and the sleek size of the Sony a7 III with this lens. You can take it with you for street photography or for traveling or just taking family photos, because as I said, the performance is probably not going to be one of the best features of the lens. You guys probably remember this scene from a couple of months ago where everything was colorful. Now, of course, in the midwinter, everything is kind of dead and dull, but I'm going to try and take some of the photos here. I will shoot with an aperture of f1.8 as well as with an aperture of f11. I'm going to try and keep the same composition and then compare the shots, especially on the edges of the frame. So, wish me luck with this one. Let's switch it to f1.8. Makes no sense to shoot f1.8 in a woodland scenario like this, but you know, this lens will always be in my backpack. And if you're learning photography, you're learning with 50mm as you start, probably, you know, because that's kind of the way our eyes see the world. Although I think that 35mm is actually more accurate to what we see, but 50 is, you know, the compression and stuff like this. Now, one thing that I should mention as well is that if you have your aperture closed down to about f11, the focusing motor and the focus breathing becomes quite extensive compared to if I have it opened all the way to f1.8. I find that it's much faster and much quieter with a wider open aperture, and I think it has to do with the mechanism inside the lens, which is probably, well, the cheapest one you can buy. And just to quickly step in here, I want to say if you guys are enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up, maybe consider subscribing to the channel. And when I get up to the top, I'm going to take some portrait shots of Alex and really put that f1.8 through its faces. Alex, by the way, is my kid. Now, before we dive into photographs, I want to talk a little bit about the build quality of this lens. This is built from some sort of metal body outer casing. The focus ring, however, is plasticky, and it's kind of smooth. It's not the smoothest focus ring ever, but it's okay, I would say. And I love the fact that there is a metal body camera lens mount. But it does feel like a little toy, and it doesn't give you that premium quality feel, which of course this is not a premium quality lens. Now, when it comes to photography, I was really blown away at how this performed with an aperture of f11. Now, that's the aperture that I take most of my landscape and woodland photographs, and the images came out sharp all the way from the center to the edge. There was no aberration, there was no distortion, and it was completely, I would say, comparable with my much more expensive 24 to 70mm Sigma art series premium quality lens which costs a full €1,000 more. But when you start opening up the aperture, that's when the problems start to show. And you can see this also in the video clips where I was shooting completely wide open, and you have that purple kind of fringing all around the edges, which really makes videos look, you know, not kind of cool. Now the fringing disappears once you start closing that aperture down to about f4. From f4 and beyond, it's completely usable. But I also wanted to compare the shots between this at aperture 2.8 to my Sigma lens with 50mm at aperture 2.8, because the Sigma only goes down to aperture 2.8. And the results were, well, you can see right here. So the Sigma has almost zero fringing and this lens is fringed a lot. Now you can reduce this in Photoshop or in Lightroom very easily, but it is another step to work with and you're never going to get the most accurate result. The background highlights still have a circular shape at an aperture of 2.8, but once you open that up to 1.8, those transform into that lemon shape, which makes that background bokeh really harsh, sharp and not smooth. So therefore, using this for portrait photography, as it's kind of meant for that, 50mm, 1.8 portraits, very bad background bokeh. So for any serious professional or semi-professional photo shoots of headshots of portraits with that shallow depth of field, this is not going to perform very well, and you don't want to charge people money with the results you're going to get from this lens. But overall, is this worth purchasing? I'm gonna say yes. So any lens that costs under €200 and it performs quite well at f4 and beyond, you know, it's worth purchasing, and it's really lightweight and you can put it in your pocket and you can take it traveling and you can take family photos, and it's basically a lens that everybody needs. So if you guys have any further comments or questions, please leave those down in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, hit the like button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.